If you do these 5 things for any woman, you're not being loving. You're being foolish. And I don't mean foolish in a men are dumb way. I mean foolish in the sense that you're trading away your power, your stability, and your long term outcomes for short term approval. You're making choices that feel noble in the moment, but quietly dismantle the very things that make a relationship work: respect, desire, and reciprocity. Most men don't do these things because they're weak. They do them because they've been trained to confuse sacrifice with love. They were raised on a script that says, if you give more, she'll appreciate you more. If you compromise enough, she'll stay. If you prove devotion, she'll feel secure. If you tolerate disrespect, you're mature. If you make her the center of your world, you're a real man. And then those same men sit in disbelief when she loses attraction, when she pulls away, when her tone changes, when her effort fades, when she stops respecting them. They say, how? I did everything. Yes, that's the problem. You did everything. Too soon. Too much. Too often. With no standards. With no structure. With no self-respect guiding the investment. Here's the hard truth most men avoid. Attraction is not a reward for effort. It's a response to value. And value isn't what you say. It isn't what you promise. It isn't what you sacrifice. It's what you consistently embody. So today, I'm going to give you the 5 things you should never do for any woman. Not because you don't care about her, not because you want to play games, but because doing these 5 things destroys the very foundation you're trying to build. This is about becoming the kind of man who can love without losing himself, the kind of man who can commit without becoming controllable, the kind of man whose presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Because once you understand this, you stop acting like love is something you earn through self-erasure. You start acting like love is something you build with standards, timing, and mutual investment. Let's get into it. The first thing you should never do for any woman is abandon your purpose. Never abandon your mission, your goals, your discipline, your direction, your principles, your health, your growth, just to keep her happy. A lot of men romanticize this idea. They think devotion means making her your whole world. They think it sounds powerful to say, you're all I need. They think it proves how serious they are. In real life, that mindset is relationship poison. Because the moment a man makes a woman his whole world, he quietly turns her into his regulator. His mood becomes dependent on her tone. His confidence becomes dependent on her attention. His peace becomes dependent on her approval. And that doesn't feel like love on the receiving end. It feels like pressure. Women don't want to be your entire reason for existing. Not because they're cruel, but because it's an impossible job. Nobody can carry the weight of being someone's entire emotional ecosystem. And here's what men miss. The things that often attracted her to you early on were your direction and your drive. Maybe she liked how focused you were. Maybe she respected your ambition. Maybe she could feel you had a life. Maybe you weren't begging for attention because you had priorities. Maybe you moved with purpose. Then once she's in the picture, you start orbiting. You cancel your workouts. You stop building your business. You delay your goals. You skip the things that made you sharp. You stop seeing your friends. You become available at any time. You start rearranging your identity around her moods. You think you're showing love. What you're actually doing is shrinking. And as you shrink, the relationship doesn't feel safer. It feels heavier because now she's not dating a man with a mission. She's dating a man waiting for her next message. That's not leadership. That's dependence. And dependence kills desire over time. Not immediately, because early chemistry can mask it. But gradually, She begins to feel that you're not choosing her, you're clinging to her. And there's a difference. A man who chooses you from a full life feels like a prize. A man who needs you to feel complete feels like a burden. You need to understand something. Your purpose is the spine of your life. A relationship is supposed to complement that spine, not replace it. The healthiest relationships are built when two people come together as complete individuals, not when one person drops everything to prove devotion. So the standard is simple. If she requires you to abandon your purpose, she's not aligned with you. If she supports your purpose, she's a real partner. And supporting that doesn't always mean agreeing with every decision. It means respecting the fact that you are a man with direction. It means she understands that your mission is part of what makes you who you are. Never forget this. You can love a woman deeply and still keep your mission sacred. That isn't selfish. That's mature. Because your mission existed before she arrived. It should still exist while she's there. And if she leaves, it's the thing that keeps you standing. The second thing you should never do is take responsibility for problems that aren't yours. Men are problem solvers. That's one of our greatest strengths. But in relationships, that strength turns into self-destruction when you don't know where the line is. There's a difference between support and rescue. Support says, I'm here. I've got your back. Let's think this through. Rescue says, give it to me. I'll fix it. You don't have to carry anything. And rescuing feels heroic at first, until you realize you've created a dynamic where she's not your partner, she's your project. When you constantly fix her life, you become her caretaker. You start handling the messes she should be handling. You start paying for things she should be managing. You start absorbing emotional chaos you didn't create. You start doing the thinking, the planning, the organizing, the cleaning, the stabilizing. And while she may appreciate that, appreciation is not the same as desire. A caretaker can be useful and still not be respected. A caretaker can be valued and still not be wanted, because usefulness creates comfort. It doesn't automatically create attraction. And over time, rescuing creates a dangerous pattern, entitlement. If you fix her financial mess once, it becomes help. If you fix it twice, it becomes normal. If you fix it 3 times, it becomes expected. If you stop, you become selfish. That's how men end up trapped. Not because the woman is evil, because the dynamic trained both of you that your role is to rescue and her role is to receive. And here's the quiet disrespect in that dynamic. Rescuing communicates that you don't believe she can handle life. Even if your intention is love, the message is, you can't, I must. That can breed resentment in both directions. She resents feeling managed. You resent feeling used. And the relationship becomes a service contract instead of a partnership. So what do you do instead? You support without removing responsibility. You listen without becoming a therapist. You offer perspective without taking control. You ask better questions. What do you think the best move is? What options do you have? What lesson do you think this is teaching you? How do you want to handle it? That's not cold. That's a respect, because you're treating her like a capable adult. You're not disabling her by doing everything for her. A strong man doesn't need to be needed. He wants to be chosen. And if you only feel valuable when you're fixing her life, you'll keep attracting situations where chaos is the entry fee. The third thing you should never do is chase her approval or compete for her attention. This is one of the most common ways men lose respect without realizing it. Because chasing doesn't always look like begging. Sometimes it looks like effort. Sometimes it looks like being attentive. Sometimes it looks like showing interest, but there's a line, and once you cross it, you stop being a man she respects and become a man she manages. Chasing approval looks like constantly checking if she's upset, fishing for reassurance, changing your opinions to match hers, over explaining to avoid being misunderstood, needing her to validate you, being unsettled when she's distant. Competing for attention looks like being visibly jealous of other men, trying to win the relationship, performing harder when you feel threatened, posting things to trigger reactions, treating her like a prize you have to earn from other competitors. Both behaviors are rooted in the same problem: insecurity. And insecurity communicates one thing: I don't believe I'm enough. When you chase approval, you're outsourcing your self worth. You're telling her, through your behavior, you are the judge of my value. That creates an unhealthy power dynamic because now she doesn't feel like she's with an equal. She feels like she's with someone who needs her evaluation. And needing her evaluation makes her feel pressure. Pressure makes people pull away. The man who maintains attraction is emotionally stable. He can care without collapsing. He can be interested without losing his center. He can hear criticism without becoming defensive. He can handle distance without panicking. Not because he's cold, because his self-respect is internal. He doesn't need her approval to feel like a man. He knows his worth because he built it through competence, discipline, experience, and standards. And here's the paradox men need to understand. The more you chase approval, the less valuable you appear. The less you chase approval, the more your attention has weight. When your attention is scarce because your life is full, it becomes valuable. When your attention is unlimited because you're hungry, it becomes cheap. So stop asking, how do I get her to approve of me? Start asking, do I approve of the dynamic I'm participating in? That's the shift from boy behavior to man behavior. The fourth thing you should never do is overinvest before she's earned it. This is where men sabotage themselves while believing they're being romantic. They meet a woman they're excited about. Chemistry sparks, the fantasy forms, and suddenly they go all in. They start doing boyfriend level investment for a stranger. Constant availability, expensive dates, grand gestures, deep emotional confessions, future planning. After a few meetings, over texting, over giving, over committing, and they call it love. But it's not love. It's impulsive attachment. And impulsive attachment kills attraction because it communicates low standards. Think about it. If you barely know her and you're already investing like she's rare, what conclusion does her mind draw? Either you do this with any woman who shows you interest, or you're desperate, or you're trying to buy her loyalty, or you're emotionally unstable. None of those conclusions create respect. There's also a simple value law at play. People value what they earn. If you hand someone your time, your attention, your money, your emotional labor before they've demonstrated character, they don't experience it as meaningful. They experience it as available. And when something is available, regardless of behavior, there's no incentive to protect it. So the correct approach is proportional investment. Reciprocity. She invests, you invest. She shows effort, you match it. She shows a consistency, you give more access. She shows respect, you deepen connection. She shows character under pressure, you consider commitment. This is not manipulation, it's discernment. Because early dating is not about proving you're worthy of her. It's about discovering if she's worthy of you. And that requires patience. It requires restraint. It requires the strength to let things develop instead of forcing them. If you always overinvest early, you're not a good man. You're a man trying to secure outcomes through excessive giving. And that strategy backfires because it tells her you're afraid she won't stay unless you keep performing. The man who has real leverage doesn't perform to be chosen. He shows up with standards and lets time reveal truth. The fifth thing you should never do is tolerate disrespect. This is the one that destroys relationships quietly because men rationalize it as maturity. It starts small: a cutting joke at your expense, a dismissive tone, a disrespectful comment in public, an insult disguised as honesty, a boundary crossed, a demand made with entitlement, and you let it slide because you don't want conflict, because you don't want to look insecure, because you don't want to be controlling, because you want peace. But what you're actually doing is training her nervous system that disrespect has no cost. Every time disrespect is tolerated, it becomes normal. And once disrespect is normal, attraction decays. Not because women only like bad boys, but because respect is the foundation of desire. No one truly desires someone they don't respect. And you can't maintain respect if your standards are optional. Here's what boundary strength looks like: not shouting, not threats, not lectures, not sarcasm, not revenge, clarity, and consequence. I'm not okay with being spoken to like that. We can talk when it's calm. I'm not staying in a conversation that turns disrespectful. Then you disengage calmly because boundaries are not speeches, they're actions. And men lose power when they talk about boundaries but never enforce them. If you say, "don't do that," and nothing happens when she does it again, your words lose weight. Your presence loses weight, and the dynamic shifts. She learns she can push, and you will fold. Some men think enforcing boundaries means becoming harsh. Wrong. Enforcing boundaries means protecting your environment. It means teaching people how to treat you through consistent standards. And yes, sometimes that means walking away. Not in drama, not in anger, just in self-respect. Because the man who tolerates disrespect is not being loving. He's being afraid. And fear is never a stable foundation for a relationship. Now notice what all five mistakes have in common. They all come from the same root: scarcity. Scarcity says, I might not find someone else. I should hold on at all costs. If I don't give more, she'll leave. If I set boundaries, I'll lose her. If I keep my purpose, I'll seem selfish. If I don't rescue her, I'll seem unloving. If I don't chase, she'll forget me. So the man starts negotiating his identity for a relationship. And that negotiation creates the very outcome he fears. Because you cannot secure love through self-erasure. You cannot keep attraction through desperation. You cannot build respect through boundaryless accommodation. The alternative to these five mistakes is not being cold. It's being complete. A complete man has purpose and protects it, supports without rescuing, is grounded without chasing approval, invests proportionally, enforces respect without drama. That man can love deeply because he doesn't need the relationship to validate his existence. He wants her, but he doesn't require her. And want is always more attractive than need. So, ask yourself the real question: do you love her, or are you trying to use her to calm your insecurity? Because a lot of men call it love when it's really fear. Fear of loneliness, fear of rejection, fear of not being chosen, fear of starting over. And fear makes men do foolish things. It makes them overgive. It makes them tolerate disrespect. It makes them chase. It makes them abandon their path. So here's the final frame you need to adopt. A relationship is not something you earn by bleeding. A relationship is something you build with standards, timing, and mutual effort. And if you want the kind of relationship where she genuinely wants to be with you, you need to stop doing things that make you less valuable. Not valuable as a human being, valuable in the dynamic, valuable in her perception, valuable in your own eyes. Because the truth is, you will never be attractive to a woman long term if you don't respect yourself. And you will never respect yourself if you keep abandoning your mission, rescuing her life, chasing approval, overinvesting early, and tolerating disrespect. Those behaviors aren't love. They're a man negotiating his worth. So stop negotiating. Build a life you're proud of. Get disciplined. Develop competence. Keep your mission intact. Have standards. Make investment conditional on character. Enforce respect calmly and consistently. And when you become that man, something happens. You stop needing advice about how to keep her because you stop living in fear of losing people who aren't aligned. You stop trying to convince anyone to see your value. You stop chasing. You start choosing. And that's where real power is. Not in controlling her, in controlling yourself, in controlling your standards, in controlling what you allow around you. These 5 things are just the beginning, but they point to the same truth. A man's greatest advantage in relationships is not more effort, it's more self respect. And self respect is built through purpose, boundaries, and discipline, not through sacrifice that empties you. So if you've been doing these things, don't hate yourself. Just recognize the pattern, then change it. Because the moment you stop acting from scarcity, you stop being controllable. And the moment you stop being controllable, you become the kind of man women don't take for granted.